So I've now done one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's guided meditations every single day for well over 6 months now. And now near the start of this journey, I actually had some blood work done on July 1st, and I just recently had some more blood work done on January 5th, so 188 days later. And so today we're going to take a look at what are some of the quantifiable physiological effects that 188 days of daily meditation has on my body. I'm not going to lie, I'm actually a little surprised by the results. Almost all my numbers have greatly improved, except for 2 numbers which actually went in the wrong direction. So I want to start off by jumping right into cholesterol, because that's something that obviously a lot of people struggle with, and I was actually at a very high cholesterol level at the start of this journey. Now, according to the clevelandclinic.org, the main reason to treat high cholesterol is to prevent or treat coronary heart disease. Coronary heart disease happens when the heart is not able to get enough oxygen-rich blood to function well and kills more people in the US than any other cause of death. Now, on my first blood test in July, my total cholesterol was 280 milligrams per deciliter. Now, the normal range is 125 milligrams per deciliter to 200 milligrams per deciliter. So 280 is definitely above that normal range and is considered high for cholesterol. That definitely puts me at a greater risk for heart disease as well as a whole bunch of other ailments that come from higher cholesterol. Now, in January, when I got tested again, almost 6 months after doing daily meditations, my cholesterol level was 174. So they were once again in that normal, healthy range, and they dropped over 100 points in just 6 months. So I'm pretty happy with those results. This means that I don't have to go on a statin like my doctor wanted me to 6 months ago. And overall, I'm just a much healthier person. So that was the total cholesterol. Well, let's take a look at the LDL levels. This is your bad cholesterol. You gotta remember the L in LDL stands for this is the one that you want to be low, L for low. And once again, the clevelandclinic.org says that the optimal or best number for LDL is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. So in July, during my first test, I was 207 milligrams per deciliter. And according to the Cleveland Clinic, my LDL levels were not just high, but they were very high. Now, after 6 months of Dr. Joe's meditations, my LDL levels are down to 117, which is fantastic. I'm really happy with that result. So I'm still not in that ideal range of less than 100, but I am making a tremendous amount of progress with that. I've greatly seen my LDL levels decrease. And if I keep up doing what I'm doing, in another 3 months, another 6 months, pretty confident I can get that number below 100. So now let's take a look at my triglycerides and how they've been impacted over the last 6 months. So triglycerides are important because most of the fat in your body exists as triglycerides. These levels are often higher in people who have diabetes or who are obese. And you're considered normal if you have a reading of less than 150. So in July, my triglyceride levels were at 117, so they're actually already in that normal range. But in January, they're down to 101. So I already had pretty good levels for my triglycerides, but nonetheless, this does show that they have decreased over the last 6 months by almost 16 points. So now let's take a look at my HDL cholesterol. And you can remember the H in HDL as this is the one that you want to be high, right? This is the good cholesterol. And HDL under 40 is considered poor and a risk factor for heart disease in men and women. HDL goal for men is 40 or higher, and reaching this is considered to be good. So my HDL in July was 49, so my HDL was actually already at a very good level. In January, when I got tested again, my HDL actually dropped down to 37, so it's actually below that 40 threshold that they recommend. So out of all my cholesterol levels, this is the only one that moved in the wrong direction. But I will say that 37 is not far from 40, so it wasn't a really dramatic decrease, but nonetheless, this is something that I do need to figure out how to increase my HDL levels. So before I jump into the other results of my blood test, I want to take a moment and kind of explain how I think it's possible that meditation can have a direct impact on your cholesterol levels. Because at first you may not be able to kind of easily make that connection. I think there's actually really 2 good explanations for this. One is physiological, the other one's a little psychological. So first, let's take a look at what WebMD says about stress and cholesterol levels. So according to WebMD, it says that when you're feeling strained, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol, hormones that rev up your heart, sharpen your brain, and help you deal with problems. Constant stress is another story. If it's a non-stop and lasts for a long time, your stress hormones remain at high levels, put a dangerous strain on your heart and other parts of your body. High levels of cortisol from chronic or long-term stress can cause high blood cholesterol along with other heart disease risks. Over time, excess LDL or bad cholesterol can build up in your arteries, causing them to become clogged and hard. Stress also triggers inflammation that lowers your HDL, or good cholesterol, which helps clear out the extra LDL. Now, one concept that Dr. Joe Dispenza often talks about is how every single thought that you have in your mind releases a series of hormones and chemicals throughout your body. And this is not new age stuff. This is very well established science, the connection between your thoughts and hormones. So for example, if you're sitting at home on your couch and you start thinking about the coworker that you can't stand or that car that cut you off this morning on your commute to work, your adrenal glands are going to start releasing cortisol and adrenaline. And if you think about it enough, you can literally feel that adrenaline, right? You can literally start shaking from how much adrenaline that you're telling your adrenal glands to release into your body. Now, on the flip side of this, if you were to think about a time that maybe you took your 6-year-old child to the playground and you had a beautiful time holding their hands and playing with them, your pituitary gland is going to release oxytocin. This is the hormone of love and connection with other human beings. If you were to sit there and start thinking about pizza and food, your body's going to release ghrelin. That's the hunger hormone. Suddenly you're going to feel hungry. If you were to think about sex, suddenly your body's going to release a whole cocktail of hormones associated with that that's going to have a physiological effect on your body. So you need to kind of understand this concept that your thoughts have a direct impact on the hormones that are released in your body. And just like WebMD pointed out, if you were to think these stressful and negative thoughts all day long, that means you're going to have elevated cortisol and adrenaline levels all day long. And there is tons of science in showing all the negative health consequences to having elevated cortisol and adrenaline levels throughout your body throughout the entire day. Now, a prolonged increase in adrenaline and cortisol has a direct correlation with an increase in ghrelin, the hunger hormone. So in other words, when you get stressed out, you eat more. We've all experienced that. It also has an inverse correlation with melatonin. So when you have elevated cortisol, your body can't produce melatonin. So in other words, when you're stressed out, you can't fall asleep. We've all experienced that as well. And prolonged levels of increased cortisol and adrenaline has a correlation with higher cholesterol levels. So when you take the time out of your day to do one of these meditations, your cortisol levels drop during that meditation. Your adrenaline levels drop, and there's other positive hormones that your body starts increasing while you're in the state of meditation. And I can tell you anecdotally, when you finish that meditation, that relaxed state, it carries over for some time after that meditation. The next few hours after that meditation, you just feel more relaxed. You know, if you did this first thing in the morning, then you commute to work, when that guy cuts you off, it's not going to bother you as much. When that guy is driving slow in the fast lane, you're not going to get road rage and worked up, because you're already starting at a place with much lower cortisol and adrenaline levels. And so this is the argument of how physiologically doing these meditations every single day can lower your stress levels, which are then going to lower your two primary stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which the science shows is going to have a big impact on lowering your cholesterol levels. But I also think that there's a really interesting psychological aspect to lowering your cholesterol levels as well by doing these meditations. There's a psychological benefit to them. So when you do one of these meditations, it takes a little bit of energy. It takes a little bit of discipline. You have to be able to focus on doing these meditations. And when a thought pops into your mind, you have to be able to push that thought away and saying, I'm not going to think that right now. I'm focusing on this meditation. And this is a skill, right? People call this metacognition. This is the ability to control your own thoughts and control your brain. And it's a skill that the average person really just never develops. And like any skill, the more you practice this, the more meditations that you do, the better you are at just dismissing these thoughts that you don't want and focusing on the meditation, right? You become more disciplined, in my opinion. And this absolutely carries over into waking life. So before I started doing these meditations, right, I had a bad drinking problem, and I would get an urge to go and drink alcohol, and I didn't want to, but I just had a heck of a time saying no to that thought. But after developing the skill, I can just dismiss that thought and say, no, I'm not drinking alcohol today. Or if I get an urge to go eat pizza and go eat McDonald's, I can say, no, I'm not doing that today. I'm eating healthy, I'm improving myself. And this is something I've definitely noticed within me, that my discipline in all aspects of my life have greatly increased by doing this practice of doing daily meditations. So after you start doing these meditations, when you're faced with that decision of eating a healthy meal that you know is going to help lower your cholesterol, or eating fried chickens from Popeyes that you know is going to increase your cholesterol levels, you're going to have a far easier time being disciplined and choosing that healthier meal and healthier just life choices in general. The next levels I want to take a look at is my total testosterone level. I want to explain my theory of why it is that my testosterone has actually increased during the 6-month period. An increase in testosterone is usually not something you'd associate with meditation or reducing the amount of meat that somebody has in their diet, which is what I did. But nonetheless, according to these lab results, my testosterone levels have gone up. So first, let's take a look at my July blood test. It shows that my total testosterone was 421 nanograms per deciliter. By January 5th, that went up to 475 nanograms per deciliter. Now the normal range for testosterone is 250 to 1100. I'm still at the lower end of that normal range, but nonetheless, I've seen a 50-point increase in my testosterone levels during the 6-month period. Now having lower testosterone levels can have a lot of negative health consequences on somebody. So according to WebMD, some of the symptoms of low testosterone include low libido, erectile dysfunction, fatigue and poor energy levels, decreased muscle mass, body and facial hair loss, difficulty concentrating, depression, irritability, low sense of well-being. And so a 50-point increase is not a huge, gigantic leap on that spectrum, but nonetheless, it is an increase, and there are a lot of positive health benefits associated with increasing your testosterone levels. Now, I started researching how is it that meditation can increase your testosterone levels, and what I found out was that there's actually a lot of studies showing that an increased cortisol levels has a direct correlation with decreasing your testosterone levels. One study I found says that human research has shown the administration of cortisol into the circulation at rest will result in reduced blood testosterone levels. Increased levels of cortisol have a significant negative effect on circulating testosterone. And so your two primary stress hormones are adrenaline and cortisol. So if you're constantly in a state of stress, you're constantly pumping these hormones into your body, according to some of these studies, that could have a direct negative impact on your body's testosterone levels. Now, cortisol also has a very strong inverse correlation with your pineal gland's ability to produce melatonin. So in other words, when you're stressed out, you can't sleep. And according to one study I found, it says that the majority of daily testosterone released in men occurs during sleep. And daytime testosterone levels were decreased by 10 to 15% in the small sample of young, healthy men who underwent 1 week of sleep restrictions to 5 hours per night, condition experienced by at least 15% of US working population. So based on this, I think you can make a pretty strong connection that increased levels of stress and adrenaline and cortisol can have a negative impact on your sleep, and just by you sleeping less, that can have a negative impact on your total testosterone level. So next, let's take a look at my hemoglobin A1c levels and how they have changed in the last 6 months. And hemoglobin A1c is essentially a measure of your blood sugar level. And according to the CDC, normal is below 5.7%, pre-diabetes is 5.7 to 6.4%, and diabetes is 6.5 or above. So before my 6 months of meditation, my hemoglobin A1c was 5.1%. So this was within that normal healthy range. After 6 months of meditation, my A1c levels went to 4.9%. So not a significant change, but I did want to kind of throw this in here just in case anybody watching this is pre-diabetic or they do have high blood sugar levels. I was able to see a small decrease in my blood sugar levels from doing these meditations. So the next thing I want to take a look at is my red and white blood cell counts. And this is actually where some of my most surprising results have come from. So according to mayoclinic.org, a high red blood cell count is an increase in oxygen-carrying cells in your bloodstream. Red blood cells transport oxygen from your lungs to tissue throughout your body. A normal range in adults generally considered to be 4.35 to 5.65 million red blood cells per microliter. And in my July blood test results, my red blood cells came in at 5.04 million red blood cells per microliter. After the 6 months of meditation, that increased to 5.17 million red blood cells per microliter. So overall, this is a good thing, right? It's not a huge increase, but nonetheless, my red blood cell count has increased. So supposedly my body may be a little bit more efficient at carrying oxygen from my lungs to the rest of my body. Now let's take a look at my white blood cell count. And according to the WebMD, a normal range is usually between 4,000 and 11,000 per microliter of blood. A blood test that shows white blood cell count less than 4,000 per microliter, some say less than 4,500, could mean your body may not be able to fight infections the way that it should. My first blood test in July shows that I have a 5.5 thousand per microliter white blood cell count, which is actually good. I'm right there in that healthy normal range. But my second blood test in January shows that I actually went down to 4.5 thousand white blood cells per microliter. So my white blood cell count actually went down, and I'm getting very close to that threshold of being considered low. And so this really surprised me. I'm actually a little confused by these results because so many people I've heard over and over again show a correlation between meditation and actually improving and increasing your immune system. So I'm a little surprised that my white blood cell count actually went down, because that is a big part of your immune system. And I would have thought that these numbers would have actually gone up. I've greatly reduced the amount of stress in my life. But nonetheless, I wanted to be fully transparent and throw this number in there just for the sake of transparency. I don't really quite understand why they went down and not up like a lot of my other metrics. If there's anybody out there that has any theories or ideas of why they may have gone down, feel free to leave it down in the comments section below. Now, I do want to point out that obviously there could be other factors that influence this number as well as all the other numbers that I've cited today outside of just meditation. So for example, the month before this, maybe 2 weeks before I got my second blood test, I did get COVID. And it wasn't that bad. It's just, for me, it's just kind of like a really bad cold. But that absolutely could have some sort of influence on my white blood cell count. I also want to point out that in the second blood test, it showed that I have a really big deficiency in vitamin D and vitamin B12. And so again, I don't know if that somehow has an influence on these white blood cell numbers. So now that I've gone over what the physiological changes have been in my body after doing Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations every single day for the past 6 months, if you want to learn what the psychological and emotional and other changes have been that I've seen in my life, check out this video right here where I break that down and go over that entire story. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about these types of meditations and kind of where I'm at in my own personal spiritual journey. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next video.